Say that again.
The fate of the entire elven race is in your hands.
Whose hands?
Yours.
Welcome once again to the Vlog. I'm your host. Today, I'll be talking about the 5th episode of Rings of Power. I just want to apologize for any decline in audio quality. I'm traveling, so I'm using my iPhone to record and edit my audio. So we'll see how this goes. In this episode, not only do they jump around a lot, but they jump around to 5 different stories in the first 13 minutes. So that was a bit excessive, but at least there's a random flying horse, which is an odd animation error for a billion-dollar production, but I'll take it. The 6th storyline comes in around the 30-minute mark. I really don't like this scattered form of storytelling, but I've gotten used to it after about 6 hours. The biggest problem with Rings of Power is that it's just so unbearably slow and so unfocused that it's really hard to connect with any of the characters. Having the main character as Galadriel was a big mistake. She's just such an emotionless robot to the point that there's no reason to root for her. I often see myself rooting against her since she's so terrible and disrespectful to everyone. I think if they would have just stuck to the elf and dwarf's buddy storyline, that this could have been really fun. The buddies have such a good rapport with each other that they bring levity to an otherwise bland show. The princess isn't in this episode, but her husband is alright too. He's starting to really grow on me, and his action in this episode was really funny. In episode 5, nothing happens again. They just talk about doing stuff. In the last episode, they decided to do something major, but in this episode, they talk about doing it and end with them starting to do whatever it is that was. Just do it already. So that was the spoiler-free section of my review. Let's start talking about the spoilers and what happens in episode 5. In the first story, the Harfoots are traveling to wherever it is that they're going. In the middle of it, they sing a little song and have a montage of their travels across the map. They reach an area that's barren, and some of them talk about leaving the girl and her family behind because they blame them for their troubles. For a people that talks about nobody being left behind, they sure like leaving people behind. Anyway, there's a pack of wolves, and they attack the girl and her family. Just as a wolf is about to eat someone, the hot guy throws the wolf and uses his special powers to scare him off. Later, she tells him how everyone is really happy with him and offers to help heal his wounds. But he's busy freezing his arm. She tries to stop him, but starts to become frozen herself. Not being able to reach him, he breaks the spell, healing himself, but throwing the girl. She's scared and runs off to report him to the cops for domestic violence. In story 2, there's a new blonde lady. She finds the hot guy's crater. That's it. That's all that happens. In story 3, the evil elf talks to one of his vampire kids. He has the vampire burn himself and talks about how his evil plan is to block out the light of the sun. Then we get to the 4th story, where the lady, her Vulcan boyfriend, and their son are at the tower. She tries to get her people to stand up to the evil elf. The old guy with the mark of Sauron convinces half of the group to surrender. Now, we go to another location for story 5, which has its own subplots. We're back on the island with Robo Blonde Lady. The guy she shared a cell with now has a job making swords, so she convinces the queen that he's really a king and he's totally going to be on the boat. He doesn't like being sold out because he reveals that his people had to surrender themselves to the evil elf to survive, but she tells him that he has to do it anyway. Blonde Lady decides to play with the rookies and takes on 5 of them with swords at one time. Eventually, one of them rips her dress, so she gives him a promotion. The promoted guy is the elf lover's son's friend, so there's this whole thing where he gets punched and isn't let on the boat. He stows away but catches a guy trying to burn down the fleet. The boat guy burns down the boat anyway, but he ends up saving the trader's life. As a reward, he's allowed to shovel horse poop. So we go back to the evil elf, who meets up with the old guy who pledges his life to Sauron. The elf, who clearly isn't Sauron, chokes him and makes him kill some random boy. Back to the tower, Spock's kid shows his dad the evil sword, who shows his mom, who decides to surrender. Then with the 6th story, which is probably the best story with the dwarf prince and his buddy, the elf, I feel if they just would have gotten rid of everything else and just focused on Elrond and Durin, we'd have a pretty good show. Disa is the best character, and her husband Durin is pretty cool. Durin's dynamic with Elrond is really fun. I'd be really interested to see what Rings of Power would have looked like if they just edited everything else out of the show and just focused on them. Season 1 would probably be about 30 minutes long, and it would probably be pretty good. So this time around, Durin is visiting the elves, and he makes up some story about how the table that they're using is special to the dwarves. That they're basically eating on a casket for their most honored dead, which gets him a free dining room table. Elrond is then told by the king that if he doesn't break his oath and tell him about the special rock, that the elves either have to leave Middle-earth or perish. Elrond goes to Durin and convinces him the seriousness of the situation, that Durin holds the fate of his people in his hands. Durin likes that, and they decide to go to his dad to try to convince him to let them mine the special rock to save Middle-earth and the elves. So that's pretty much what happens, which isn't much. The biggest problem with Rings of Power is that they're focusing on way too many characters, skipping around between them and talking about doing stuff without actually doing anything. With this episode, I kind of know what to expect, but what makes it so frustrating is that I kind of feel like this could have been a good show if they got rid of the 5 other stories and just focused on the one good one. Elrond, Durin, and Disa are all likable, relatable, and interesting. You know, the exact opposite of Galadriel. I actually care about them, and their interactions are all natural. I really don't know why they didn't try to focus on the fun of the show instead of dragging it down with boring, dribbling nonsense. After episode 5, Rings of Power still isn't worth watching. It's like a car crash that I just can't look away from. I just keep waiting for something to happen, but after 6 hours, I'm still waiting. I want to thank you for watching my video, and I hope you have a wonderful day.